Alright, here's what you're going to need. 2-part epoxy and something to mix it on, screwdriver, file of some kind, deburring tool, 4mm Allen key. The printed parts, the pusher, and the plunger, the pusher back for parts out of your, and the 2 grip pieces here. 2 70mm bolts, 2 of the large round O-rings, one of the middle round O-rings and the small round O-ring, and 6 screws, and your plunger tube. Alright, first off, let's get this plunger tube worked out. Figure out what the depth you need to scrape the surfaces, and use that to score the inside of the plunger tube. You're trying to create some tooth for that epoxy to stick in. I'm just going to scrape it around in there. About that depth. Let's work it out a little bit. Good enough. That'll work. Okay, next up, these 2 pieces need to be assembled with an O-ring in between. Might be a good time to use a little bit of your lube on that to make sure it goes on nice and smooth. I sometimes would suggest putting some E6000 on this to hold it together, but it hasn't proved necessary. The seal is perfect without it, but if you're going to be running your Greg pretty hard, that might be a good idea. Connect these 2 pieces together, lining up the little nubbins. 6 screws. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now I'll probably do this in a star pattern. Next up, let's put the grip handles on. Let's press that down. Get it started. It all the way in. Same for the other side. These provide some support to the bolt so that these plastic pieces can withstand the power of being primed. Now, those are nice and tight. This is part of this. I'd suggest going across it with the deburring tool. Make sure that's nice and chamfered. Both sides, since you're here doing it anyway. Let's mix up a little bit of 2-part epoxy. Put both O-rings on the back. Works. And then take all this epoxy and slather it over those little indentations on the side. Just make sure they're all filled in. Okay, now take the side that you scratched up, put it over top of that, making sure to capture those O-rings inside of it, which should be a little bit wet. And the epoxy making this somewhat easier. There we go. Okay, and just kind of work it on there. Any excess at this point can be cleaned off with a paper towel and soap and water. I'm just gonna use my fingers. So I'm here. And for the last step, put the O-ring on the top here. Now your plunger is nice and plunger. All right, next up we'll do the plunger. For printed parts, you're gonna need the plunger and the plunger extension. Out of your hardware kit, you're gonna need the shortest piece of threaded rod, the 2 square O-rings, the PPA CF plunger catch, a washer, and 2 of the 1032 nylock nuts. For tools, a pair of pliers, and 3/8 inch nut driver or socket wrench. Should be all you need. This part, we'll start with getting this on. Thread it on as best you can. It may need pliers to hold on to get it down far enough. If it's a little bit tight, feel free to use a round file to get it where you need it. Once that's on, nylock nut. Don't worry about these threads in the middle. It can hold up. It's not necessary, just the tips are the important part. Get that on until just a little bit of the threaded rod comes out the other side. Next up, extension, plunger, the washer, another nut. So there's going to be a little bit of extra here. This will give you a place to grab onto with your pliers, gently in this case, because you're going to need those threads to get it started. Once it's started, we can move back here. The objective is to keep all the extra threaded rod towards the front. That catch usually stays put, but you may need to fiddle with this to get it right. Don't over tighten this. It's not that important. It just needs to exist. If you over tighten it, this starts bulging and it gets weird, and you might make your plunger a little too short. So just perfectly stiff. Both of the square O-rings go on this. One is, it should only need one, but two gives you a little bit of extra insurance. There, you now have a plunger. Let's build the receiver section. For this, you're just going to need 4 screws, top and the bottom of the receiver, potentially a hammer, and a screwdriver. Top goes on like so. Make sure that it's nice and tight against there, which is where the hammer comes in handy. Just needed 6 screws. 2 screws here, 2 screws here. Kind of at angles. Bottom goes on that little nubbin. This one came out nice. This has a screw here, which my screwdriver won't reach, and a screw in there. Screwdriver needs to go in there. Alright, let's build the trigger guard. For this, you're just going to need some super glue. The trigger guard itself and the pusher pieces. Assemble this through the trigger guard here. Make sure it slides freely. The angle will be going away from the bottom. So, like this. Place a drop of super glue in the button or 2. Hold that there until it dries, and your trigger guard is done. Let's get the trigger installed. For this, you're just going to need the bungee and the heat-set threaded piece that'll go into the top hole of the trigger. I apologize, I already put these together earlier. Just push it in, hold it in with it, take a soldering iron, push it in. Alternately, you could use a piece of threaded rod and a lighter to get it hot enough so that it seats, and then make sure all the lines are nice and clean. There's a channel here that it rides in. Make sure that's nice and free of friction. To assemble it, this is your trigger spring. Thanks, Sleigh Butts, for the idea on this. It's proven useful on multiple builds. Tie a knot, put it through here. Run the string through the bottom hole. We'll find a hole in there that it runs in. Just push it through. Probably use something to grab the other side. rest of the way up. Here. Tie this somewhat tight. The looser, as long as it returns to home, that's all this needs to accomplish. The less tight it is, the better. But like that, this needs to return back home. Cut off the excess, and your trigger is installed. Okay, let's do the mag release. We'll need a 25mm pin, the smallest spring, the mag release, and your mid-piece with the trigger in it. If your prints are a little tight like mine are, the trick is you can take the pin itself, chuck it in the drill, and use it to remount your hole a little bit to make it a little bit smoother. It creates a nice smooth wall. All right. A little drop of super glue in here. Hold the mag release spring in place. If you wait for it to dry, which I'm not going to do. This piece will end up resting inside here to get everything lined up. Drop your pin in. Test the function. Looks good. Okay, now your mag release is in. Okay, grip and trigger guard. You're going to need a screwdriver, a bunch of screws, your trigger guard, grip, and your fully assembled mid-frame here. Start by putting the trigger guard in, and then the grip slides into the dovetail in the back. There's screws here. Here, here, and same on the other side. Check for function. That should push the magazine completely clear when you push on it. Yes, it's at my finger length, not yours. And the grip's installed. Let's get the stock assembled and the trigger rod depth. You're going to need the shorter or medium length piece of threaded rod, couple of pins, handful of screws. We're going to take the stock, the thumb hole part of the stock, cheek rests, and the whole receiver assembly here. Start by taking the catch lifter, put it back here, sticking out the back a little bit. And screw it. Pins are a little bit out. There we go. Should make a nice hole. Use a hammer to get it there. And something to drive it in a little bit further. work on that until it has as little friction as possible. Okay, also while we're back here, this surface needs to be as smooth as possible. You're gonna hit it with a file, put it on something smooth. These glacier build plates leave a pretty slippery surface, but that's for a future part. Next up, we'll put the thumb hole stock in. Push the pusher all the way up to that. We'll get to that later. And then pin goes here. It doesn't go in all the way, just most of the way. A little bit sticking out. That'll be picked up later. 2 screws on either side. Okay. While we're here, might as well install the cheek rest. Cheek rest. Okay, most important part of this build, getting this rod to the right length. There's a hole in the grip that leads to the trigger, and this screws into it. What you're going to want to do is test fit this together. And what should happen is this should not be able pushed up as the trigger moves in. It should just touch it, and as you can see, I need to pull the trigger rod in about that much because it moves. Screw that down a little bit. Testing. See, just barely moves when I get there. Any movement at all is not good, so we need to pull in a couple more points. If need be, get your pliers for this. Down. Didn't move, and trigger can push it freely. Nice. Okay, so that's depthed correctly, and that part of the stock is assembled for future reference. Here's about 9¼ inches of threaded rod coming up from the grip. And that should be about the length you're aiming for when these are being installed. Next up, we'll get the catch holder installed. For this, you're going to need a few screws, a couple of pins, the catch plate itself, the little black spring that came in your hardware kit, catch holder, and the stock assembly itself, and a little bit of lube. Again, make sure this is nice and smooth. That's nice and smooth. The less friction between these two surfaces, the better. That's nice and smooth. Just make this a little nicer. We'll rub in a little bit and move onto that whole back hole area here, which is wholly appropriate if you know why. All right. Catch plate has a little nubbin on it. Put that on the cut end or the squared end of your little black spring. Don't let your black spring get away. Install catch plate with the rounded piece facing toward the stock. That should move easily. Little friction as possible. Next up, I'll grab a couple of pins. These two holes for pins. Nice. There's two holes for screws. Most of the heavy lifting on this is going to be done by the bolt coming through and catching the plates, so this just needs to hold it there for now. And the catch should be extremely visible through the catch plate should be extremely visible through the hole. More the better. If we're back to testing our trigger again, you can see fully visible, and it should lift up entirely when we pull the trigger, which it does. Alright, that's the stock assembly done. Okay, now we're going to set up a few ancillary pieces here. You'll need rail number 4, the 2 pieces of the riser, and the 3 pieces of the barrel core. The barrel core pieces have numbers and arrows on them showing orientation. They're held together simply by pins. That's the barrel shroud together. These are held together with a couple of pins through here. Actually, these, drill it because they're a little bit tight. I want these two pieces to fit really tightly together. Okay. Rail number 4 fits in like slow with the hole facing out. This is a slip fit. Don't push it too far in. The depth of it will be determined by how your prints went together. It's very tight. Getting it back out is a pain in the ass, so just like put it in a little bit. That'll be sufficient to get us to the next step. Next up, we're going to get the muzzle together. You're going to need a couple pins, a whole bunch of screws, the regular nut, one of the 1032 bolts, and rail number 1, and we'll get this together. The nut drops into the tension bar and gets dropped through that hole there. Just like that. The bolt goes through the hole at the front and meets up with that nut on the other side. Once it's in, it should pick up, but not. There we go. That'll be how we tension the rod when we get to that point. And at the end with the most screw holes, in this case number 3, gets dropped. It's down into the dovetails there. There's 6 screws on either side. And then rail 1. Lines up there, 3 screws through the top. Alright, that's your muzzle done. Ow. There's 2 pins. Go here and here. Might as well get those in place on this side. There, your muzzle's done. Okay, now we're starting to get serious. Let's finish the entire front of the blaster. We'll need the 4 hand grip sections, the hand guard, the hand grip, 2 remaining sections of rail, the receiver, and the riser to finish this up. We'll start by putting, and a 1032 lock nut, bunch of pins and screws. One of these has just straight dovetails. There's a small hole in there to catch a nylock nut that goes metal side up into there. Pin. Top rail has a back to it. And that all goes together. The front matches up with this. You can see the hole where your pin is going to end up. Kind of keep that all the way to the back until you figure out how long the rails are going to need to be. At this point, section 2 goes on for the top rail. Section 3 can go back here. And then a screw through here holds that on. On the back, we're going to add, there's this hole here that needs a pin captured halfway through it. This is a tight fit and we're going to need some super glue. And tap it like till about there. Drop a super glue on it. And then center it pretty close. This is where the bipod legs are going to clip into. Put our pin here. Drive that home. Next up, don't forget front grip. There's 2 screws that hold that to the rail. We're getting pretty close to the camera now. There's 4 pins here to hold the receiver on. receiver slots in. Gently. Usually. Let's get a little more aggressive. There we go. Just have to use a little authority. There we go. Okay. That section's on. Now, this is where we're going to go figure out how much of this rail we need out here. There. That should line up here. Just push it till it's flush. That part's done. Okay, now for the fun part. Assembling the B-car. You'll need a Mega XL dart if you want this to actually go smoothly. Use that to make sure you get the right depth on the bearings. Bearing orientation on this is inside to the left with the barrel facing you. Use something sharp, either a really thin screwdriver, which is ideal for this, or an Allen key that can fit all the way through. Stab the bearing. Grab one of your needle pins. Push it in. Tap it in a little. And then you can use the next hole, adjacent hole, to get it down into place. And then you just do this over and over again 55 times. You may think this is hard, but really after you do it a couple hundred times, it gets much easier to just build up a rhythm. I'm not going to make you watch me do all 55. But you see the methodology here. Okay, so once you spend half an hour doing that, I'll see you later. All right, let's get on to some major assembly here. Start with the easy thing. Either pick a spring or pick both springs. These will nicely coil in together. This is how it was meant to be. The larger but weaker T21 spring is a little bit shorter than the K12, so just kind of stop it right at the one of the face. This is the face that's going to be against the plunger. Works perfectly well. Okay. Next up, let's get these two pieces together. There's 4 pins here that are fairly deep into the material. Just because the front of the other piece is a bit shallow. There we go. take the grip part, slide it in there, make sure everything up here is lining up. We've got 4 screws on top of the riser. All kind of wiggling things. And then 2 screws on the cheek pieces of the mag well on either side. Something I will bring up, because I didn't mention it earlier, about the 40-odd screws on the other side of this blaster. Get there. Everyone knows every hole over here gets its own screw. There are 2 at the top and 1 in the back to completely lock all this together. Alright, next step. The long ass threaded rod goes into a hole right here and then intersects with the nylock nut that's right here. Just screw it in a little bit so it doesn't want to go anywhere. Next up. Oops. I need some lube, and I mean a lot of it. Like, use up the rest of your bottle here. Save a little bit for your piston, your plunger. Looks like a piston. What's the difference between a piston and a plunger? I'm not an engineer. Seats down all the way. Next up, rails. If these throw any difficulty, feel free to lube them. These should go in nicely on mine. Pull them out a little bit, bias them a little bit towards the back. We'll get them lined up later. Perfectly. Okay. That's mostly together. All the things coming out the back. Okay, next up, we'll move on to the stock here. There's 4 pins for alignment. Four pins for alignment. Nice and seated. This one is going to include the spring spacer for maximum power, and then make this easy for the camera. Everything should line up on the stock. It's hard to do with one hand here. Stay. Everything's going where it should. Spring spacer's still there. And we're closed. Okay, next up. Treat this like a pin. I can see that the bar needs to be pushed back a little. I can do that here from the front. There we go. This is going to be close. There we go. Let's see where we're at. This pin should be able to come through both sides of this. Okay. Just pounding everything together here. Next major thing, we're going to put a nylock nut back here. And use this to tighten it. At some point, start to close up a little. There we go. There it goes. You see the whole the gaps filling in. All right. At this point, we need to test to see where the tension rod is in relation to the whole thing. Tapped in a little. I'm trying to line up the hole here with the bar, and this bar is a tiny bit short compared to where the turning is up in. It's coming. There it goes. Okay. So I got the hole lined up and got it started. I need Allen key. I wanted to screw it in just to make it easy on myself. There we go. Once that's all the way through, I come to final tension by tightening this down. At the front. I don't know how easy this thing has been on how much of this has been on camera, but I tried to do as best I can. Okay, Greg, mostly assembled. Next step is easy. Drop in a barrel. Probably should have looped up the pusher before I put that in there. Well, probably should have also chamfered the barrel a little more. There we go. Okay. Oh. There we go. Screw on the V-car. All right. It's mostly assembled. We'll move on to magazines and final bits in the next video. Okay, let's do magazines. Magazine spring goes in the top here. Loops in I'm using a piece of TPU filament as a string here. Loop it through the little hole. This could be a piece of string, a piece of filament, something that just lets you pull it through. And then you can get the loop all the way to the top, or bottom, I guess. Pop out the little tab that's in the hole, clean it out. Drop it in. Base plate kind of goes on with a smack. And then, probably optional, screw in the back. Magazine. I've got a tool built specifically to build for these because I make so many of them. It just got a little hook on it. Makes life easier. If you've got like a crochet hook or something available, do that. If you're having issues with it, I'm just kind of working it a little bit. It gets better as it sees use. And that's magazines. Okay, let's do the final touches here. We're going to put the bipod on using the M4 bolt, the M4 nut, and these thicker small springs. So line it up. Put the peg in here. Drop in a nut. Put the square end of the spring, because it's going to be cut in half from full length. The square end goes toward the bipod and it goes around the screw. Let's see if I make this at this angle. Oh, good, that's a good shot. Sometimes the nut likes to spin a little. The objective here is that it seats fully and still moves freely. Perfect. Let me just repeat that on this side. Spring around the nut. Should work on the tolerances this a bit better, but on a good day you should only ever do this once. There we go. They usually line up pretty close to the edges of the back side here, and a little bit of work because the threads try to bite into the bipod panel. Bipods work. Next up, now we know that everything's working. Trigger pull is doing what it's supposed to back here, and it's been tested. We can throw the butt plate on here. Maker's Muse says never to use screws as locating pins, but the reality is, what are you going to do if you need two flat surfaces to be joined anyway? There's that. Next on the agenda, once this is nice and tight, we know where it's clocked to, I'll put a few strips of super glue just around the front here so that if need be it can be removed, but in general ill advised. And then I just line that up where I want it. I know you might want to put it that way, that's kind of weird, but it might look cool to you. Okay, so muzzle brakes on there. And then lastly, you have to assemble the scope in place because there's no access to the nuts once it's tied on or tightened on. So put your red dot about center. Like actually put it straight on there instead of it on an angle. There we go. The outside portions go on first. It's just one at a time so I don't screw anything up. Here we go. There's little rails that run between there, and then the insides like that. That is a Mammoth Greg, all assembled Hopefully these videos help you get through this process. I apologize that a video hasn't come sooner, but it's cool. I like these things.